You know, the last time I got introduced on stage, one of my colleagues pulled this trick on me, pulled a prank, and introduced me as ex-Bollywood actress Sandhya Hegde, presents How to Win in the Product-Led Era. And I mean, this is LA, so you guys might have not even batted the proverbial eyelid, but that was not. And there was this rush of panic in the room as I could see people checking their phone, like, did I sign up for a weird TED Talk? Like, what's going on? Yeah, it was not very funny at the time. But welcome to the Product Analytics Summit. So Amplitude is an analytics solution that works with product teams at companies like Microsoft, Under Armour, Twitter, PayPal, Intuit, which you'll hear more about later today. We power more than 20,000 products, and over the last few years of doing this, we have definitely made some keen observations. This is my favorite one, which is, having had a few hyped up jobs in the past, I can vouch for the fact that building product is the best job you can have today. How many people here are part of a product team in some way? PM, engineer, designer, analytics, data science, most of you, okay. The rest of you, thank you for coming. There's an open bar. No, it really is a magical time to be building products. The world of product as we know it has completely transformed in the last few years, a couple of decades maybe, right? If you think about how technology products were sold maybe like 25 years ago, what you had to do was actually call someone. You had to talk to the sales team. The sales team owned the business. In fact, one of my mentors used to say, a CEO is basically a head of sales who understands profit. And that was the only function in the team that was responsible for really building out the business, while the product team sat in a room and wrote something for 2 years and then came out with a solution. And obviously, that changed dramatically with the advent of the internet. And if you think about Web 1.0, it was basically a new marketing channel to deliver goods. In fact, if you were a product manager, even at a company like Netflix circa 2007, you were basically managing the equivalent of an online Wufoo order form, trying to get people to sign up to subscribe to DVDs. That was your entire product management, was one single simple funnel. And the website and the company was really owned by the marketing teams. And digital marketing became a whole new powerhouse to contend with, right? To the extent that people started talking about, how everybody needs to become a marketer. So brownie points for guessing what comes next. Mobile. And with mobile, you now have 3.4 billion people who potentially connected online all the time, and people who want real end-to-end product experiences, not just a way to order things. Right? They're walking around with a potential product experience in their pockets all the time. So I'll try to explain why this has led to the product era in 30 seconds. So the barrier to entry to building products has crashed with smartphones and Web 2.0. Which means you have a lot of thousands and thousands of new applications being built every day. Amplitude was started by 2 engineers barely fresh out of school that are now working with 20,000 product teams in the span of 4 years. That was unimaginable a decade ago. And you have so much more user choice and access, which has resulted in technology changes becoming much more rapid than they used to, right? Look at the adoption of something like Alexa, things like virtual reality, that didn't really happen as fast before. And that means that consumer choice is extremely high today. You have folks who want product experiences on demand. They don't want ads. They don't want to be locked in. And above all else, they care about the value they get out of the product. They don't care what celebrity endorses your product. They don't really care how cool your campaign was. They're barely even watching advertisements anymore because they're all streaming. So what all of this has done, it has taken us from sales-led companies, the era of sales-led companies, to marketing-led, to finally product-led. And all of these forces have made product teams a central role in every organization, where the way people interact with your product is how they feel about your brand. the way people discover your product is by using it, right? Virality, freemium models means that product is your new distribution channel. And last, without a great product, you have no customer loyalty because no one is locked in anymore. On the other side of the coin is the fact that we have more information on product usage than any time before, right? We have something like 20 zettabytes of product usage data in the world, which means your own tracking data, like the footprint you are generating, wouldn't fit on your own hard drive. Consider that. So the opportunity is there to like convert this into some sort of wisdom for ourselves. And companies that have figured out how to extract that wisdom are really taking over. Like these companies are getting to 10 billion, 50 billion in market cap like faster and faster than anyone else has in the history of product management or product development. But it's not really tech startups, just tech startups thinking about this, right? Look at how Satya Nadella is trying to reinvent Microsoft. He says, and I quote, "It's not about people needing our software, devices, etc. It's about them loving it. That's the goal." He's basically saying, being a monopoly is not working out anymore. I really, really need people to like our products, right? Which means that what used to be a massive competitive advantage is no longer one. It's just poof, vanished. Disney. Content was their massive competitive advantage. It was their strategy. And now they realize they actually need direct-to-consumer distribution through a great product experience. Or Intuit, which you'll hear more about from much greater authority very soon. Like, look at how much focus they have on staying ahead of the game. And when they talk about investing in research, that means talking about investing in innovation, in great product experiences, and in becoming product-led. And it's not even just tech companies, right? You have CEO of a company like Under Armour, which is like you could call it an apparel company, an athletics company, a sports company, but they see themselves now as a technology company. They want to become one, right? And they are buying applications like MyFitnessPal, MapMyFitness, and Domondo, and they're not just buying it for fun. They are actually integrating it into the workflow of Under Armour as a company, using it to do research on what do our consumers actually use the products they buy from us for? Like when they buy our shoes, how much do they run with it? What kind of shoes do they really need based on the terrain they are running on? Like they really want to understand their consumers a lot better, not just like have an app for having an app. And that's a very, very big change. So how do you make this work? How do product-led companies work? How do you reach this apex of evolution? Right, that's the question. And having worked with some of these amazing companies, we have found that there are 3 really critical things that you need to do to be able to evolve and be able to adapt fast. First, you need to address the full customer journey. You have to be obsessed about every part of the customer's life that touches the pain that you are solving. You can't just narrow down on like, yeah, this thing I'll ship this feature for and my job is done. 2, optimize for speed of innovation. And optimize what? Optimize process, infrastructure, not be happy with the status quo, but actually ask yourself, like, what do we need to change in the company every few weeks and months to be able to move faster and innovate faster. 3, my favorite one, own the business outcomes. Who are the product folks here today that feel like they have a very, very clear definition of success for their team? Like they know, they can point to this one thing and say, yes, if we do this, it means we are building great products. Don't be shy. Like 6 hands are up, right? We really need to own some outcomes, whether you want to call it a business outcome, a KPI, but we really need to own something, and we'll talk more about that. So first one, addressing the full customer journey. What does this mean, right? So from awareness to the end of a transaction, like really thinking about the whole thing as your product experience, which means you don't show ads anymore. You have to distribute product, not advertising. You need to track value, not vanity metrics. And you have to productize solving every pain. You can't say, well, if people don't get it, they'll ask customer support, and they'll find out, right? So like Bezos says, like, put the customer first and invent for them constantly. And one of my favorite examples of this is, the good KPIs, they're always deep in the funnel. You shouldn't really care what that beginning number is because it doesn't really matter. It's a vanity metric. What really matters is some critical event that everyone needs to be optimizing for. And we have some customers who have done a brilliant job of this. Right? So I love talking about bonobos because they really live this ideology. Their ads are exactly like their product. Like, you can barely tell the difference between what's going on. Their advertising is exactly like their product, and it's a single click away from purchase. You are never being shown anything that's not a single click away from purchase. And what they really care about and what they really track is not how many people are seeing this stuff, but how many people are taking actions on it, right? Really tracking the value, not the vanity. And last, they will productize solving for every pain. They won't leave this part of the cart, like cart abandonment, for something the marketing team should worry about later. It's all a part of the product experience. And we try to live this in Amplitude as well. When you land up on our website, you can directly jump into our product experience. You don't have to read pages about it or watch videos. You can just experience it yourself. This is a little more nuanced. So instead of tracking, I don't even know what our number of sessions or page views or DAUs are. I actually don't. I could guess, but I don't. And what I do know is how many people are doing the critical event I really care about every day, which is completing a query in Amplitude, right? Asking a question, getting a response. I care about that. And in particular, I care about how many people are asking 5 questions in their first week, because we have a massive difference in long-term retention between people who have asked 5 or more questions and people who have asked fewer than that, right? It's night and day. So once you have that insight, you need to optimize your entire company around that insight, rather than that being in oh, our data scientist found this new cool thing. Did you hear about it? And last, you have to solve every problem, whether or not it fits into your profile of what you think problems are, right? We had a lot of customers say, I don't really understand what the events in my product taxonomy mean. And we could have said, well, create a wiki somewhere. Go set up definitions somewhere and find out what your events mean. Instead, we just solved it inside Amplitude because it was core to the process of completing a query. 2, second ingredient, optimizing process and infrastructure for speed of innovation. And that means having small cross-functional teams. It means empowering them with clear goals and access to data. And most importantly, incentivizing learning and impact rather than the number of features they have shipped. How many people here have companies that care about number of features shipped? Companies that care, have you shipped anything this week? How many things have you shipped in the last 2 or 3 weeks, right? Sounds familiar? It's easy to count, so people care about it. Let's talk about what the org structure could look like to move fast, right? So you have decentralized squads popularized by Spotify in 2012. They're pretty far ahead of the curve on being product-led. And these are cross-functional teams that work pretty independently with a clear goal. And we see companies everybody from folks like Twitter Video, fairly new age teams, to decades-old companies like Yellow Pages now moving towards this very fast-paced squad model. And to actually make it work, not pay lip service to it, you have to have a very, very clear goal for each pod, increase week 4 new user retention to X%, very clear. And then you get to choose how you get there, right? 2, you have to give that team full access to the data needed to know what's working and not working. They cannot be bottlenecked. If you don't have analytics, the highest paid person's opinion in the room wins every time. And that is not consistent with being product-led or being customer-focused. And 3rd, you need to review learnings and impact, not number of features shipped. These are massive changes required, but if you keep staying in the status quo and you don't really embrace this change, you are going to get left behind. Third, owning the business outcomes, really important ingredient. And this is where like the magic of the North Star metric comes in. How do you find that perfect metric that's highly correlated to revenue but is not revenue, right? That one metric just before revenue that's not actually revenue but is very correlated and can be broken down into discrete goals and made clearly visible across your entire company. So let's walk through an example of what that might look like. Right, we'll take one of our customers and kind of break it down into like a hypothetical scenario. So most of you are familiar with Instacart. You can order groceries on Instacart. And their North Star could be something like items received by customer, right? Not revenue, not profit, but items received. And how does this help them align the entire product team to move fast and actually add value to their customers? So they use something we call the product analytics formula, right? And the first component of that is breadth. So let's start with breadth. Breadth is about the number of users placing orders, right? And that would mean efforts around number of new users, increasing new user, subscriber conversion, etc. The second component is depth. So depth, for Instacart, for instance, could be the number of items in the order, which means having a better recommendation engine, doing real-time stock management, improving the usability, anything that helps people place larger orders with more items. The third component is frequency, which means how often do people place orders? And that's where stuff like notifications, reminders, short-term sales, and those efforts would line up. And last, you have efficiency, which is how fast and well are we actually delivering what people want. This is where efforts like having an algorithm to handle replacement requests would come in. This is where making it easy to connect to your customers when you're actually at their doorstep would come in, right? So you can use this product analytics formula, this engagement formula, to actually structure and break down a high-level North Star metric into different projects across your company. And the net of all this is, the PM is the new GM. You're not just thinking about like what features got shipped, but you have to think about like what you did that was good for your company that's driving the business forward. You can't just push metrics. You have to think about what the process and infrastructure your company needs to actually innovate faster. Right? These are higher level responsibilities. It's a higher level of leadership, but there's no leadership without accountability. And so your product org needs to first become accountable to be able to lead. So those are kind of the big takeaways from this. You have these shifting trends in technology and consumer choice that have made products central to organizations. And that is our primary thesis. That's what presents an opportunity to folks like us in this room, because product-led companies are winning in this era. There are 3 key ingredients to becoming a product-led company. You need to address the full customer journey. You need to optimize for speed of innovation. And you need to really own the business outcome as the product team. And last, that's kind of what makes the PM the new GM. And if you take one thing away from this, that would be, there is no leadership without accountability. Those two go hand in hand. So that's all I have for today, and I hope that this sparks some thought and inspires some questions in you to go take a look at how you can go back and help your company build better products. Thank you. I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Hi, I'm curious, are you guys able to look at the types of consumers, or the customers that you have, and sort them by like their actual industry and how they function within their own industry?
Yes.
And my curiosity is like, you guys study analytics, like consumer platforms. I don't know if you do like healthcare, all types of different ones. Like, do you notice like which ones are stickier, which ones are more successful, like based on whatever variables are involved?
You mean kind of what are the different engagement frameworks you use based on like what the industry is? Is that
Yeah.
what you're asking?
I mean, like, how like consumer companies they have higher engagement, like social networking platforms would have way
Yeah,
higher
yeah.
engagement. How do like a healthcare company or how does
Right,
like a tech
right.
company
Yeah.
like athletic software company, like
Makes
how do they
sense.
figure?
Yeah. So the way we think about product analytics, there are kind of 3 different types of product analytics frameworks based on the business model, right? Like you mentioned, it need not be about healthcare. It could be like maybe healthcare and finance are similar, something like that. But there are 3 types of models. So there's engagement-based models, there's consumption-based models, and there's productivity-based models. So engagement-based models are your Facebook, Twitter, Google. They just want you to spend time. They want you to spend more time, and they will show you ads, right? So it's a very simple transaction. Consumption-based models are your Amazons. Like they want you to spend more on their platform, spend less time, that's fine, but spend more money. And then there's productivity, which is where a lot of B2B software comes in, a lot of finance and healthcare could potentially come in, where it's about task success. Spending more time might be a bad idea, not a good idea, right? What you want to measure is how fast and how frequently is my customer able to get successful on my platform for a productivity tool. Amplitude is a great example. We don't try to maximize time spent on Amplitude. That means people are struggling to answer their questions. That would be terrible, right? So we optimize for task success because we are a productivity platform. So those are kind of the 3 verticals we have. There are different types of healthcare businesses, for example. So if you're WebMD, you want people, it's an engagement healthcare model. But if you're Athena Health, it's more a productivity engagement model because you want people to be able to like send that email and read that medical report. Yes.
So you use your analytics, study your users and customers, and you're like, cool, we know what that critical event is. What sort of mechanism do you recommend for the organization as a whole to track that over time? If you're like, hey, we need to change the product team's focus because our critical metric has changed. Like, how do you make sure that that's still what you should focus on?
That's a great question, yeah. And we've actually had a few kind of steps of evolution. Like it took us a while to figure out what the right metric was. And I think, in fact, it should probably change based on the stage and life cycle of your company. So as a very early stage company, if you're like really making sure you're trying to find product market fit, then a lot of your critical metrics, maybe even the critical event, should be around depth. Like there are only a few people, but they are getting a lot of value out of whatever it is that my product does, right? We have real product market fit. It's aspirin, not vitamin. And then when you start kind of going into growth mode, you want to focus on breadth. You have figured out a product market fit. Now you want to get more people in. So whatever your metric is and whatever your critical events are should shift more towards that idea of growth. And finally, as a mature company, you want to think about like stickiness, because stickiness is basically like how often people come back into your platform, because that gives you the opportunity to like show them new products and new features and like get them involved in like other parts of the workflow that they weren't using your company to solve for before. So I do think you're right, it like changes over time. What we have found is the best way to percolate that through an organization is just full visibility. Like have those big TV monitors, big dashboards, talk about your numbers or your metrics in every occasion you get. Talk about why you measure what you measure. I think that's one of the most important things is like people don't often talk about like why this is the right metric or not able to justify it and just go with what's easy to measure rather than what's the right thing to measure. So we talk about what the product team is accountable for in like our company all hands every single week, for example. So when there is a change, there's a cascade throughout the entire organization.
Where have you found organizations struggle the most with becoming product-led? Like, where are some of those common stumbling points? Obviously, a lot of organizations are having, they want to be product-led. They want to be solving clear problems for specific segments of their user base, using clear metrics and organizing their teams around these objectives. But there are challenges along the way. What are some of them that you've seen?
That's a great question. I think, to be honest, all of these things are hard to do. None of them are easy, and the bigger the organization is, the harder it probably is. That's why there are very few intuits in this world. Not everyone can reinvent themselves easily. But I would propose infrastructure and culture. As a big company, if you realize like your entire stack is outdated and you have to make a big change, it's very hard to even figure out where to start. Like often that knowledge is not inside the company, and you have to go find someone else to like bring that expertise into the company of saying, okay, like we need to change our stack, we need to change how we warehouse data, like we need to change almost everything. Where do we start? And the second thing is culture. We know a lot of product teams that struggle with this idea of like how do we actually hold ourselves accountable when no one else is interested. Right? Like I can go and say, oh, I own this business outcome, but if there isn't organization-wide buy-in, if the culture isn't there, then like does it even truly matter? And that's also hard. Like that has to be a top-down drive of some of the executive team saying, yes, this is like the cultural change we want, and we won't just put pressure on like the product team to like ship a new cool toy every year and then move on to the next toy, which is what we see a bunch of big companies doing. But really focus on like how did that improve our company, how did that improve our product customer experience, like actually follow through, not just do like build, release, move on, but do build, release, learn. And that's a massive cultural change, more than like adopting tools and learning analytics frameworks. That culture change is hard. Thank you so much. I'm sticking around and would love to talk with all of you, and happy to share more stories as soon as you guys have time.